Imagine standing on the edge of a vast sea, your heart beating in sync with the desperation of a people who have only known slavery. Freedom seems like a distant dream, as fragile as the chains that bind them. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? That freedom could begin at the most desperate moment of their lives. This is not just the story of a miraculous escape, but of a spiritual revolution where faith defies logic and the impossible becomes a path paved by divine intervention. At this very moment, Moses raises his staff and the Red Sea parts. Against all odds, a path emerges from the turbulent waters, promising not just immediate salvation, but also a future of freedom. It's a scene that challenges our understanding, but here lies a profound truth. Sometimes, it's at the edge of the abyss that we find the passage to our greatest liberation. Have you ever felt trapped by circumstances that seem insurmountable? Have you doubted the possibility of real change? The story of the crossing of the Red Sea is an invitation to re-examine those doubts. It shows us that with faith, the journey to freedom can begin with a simple, courageous step toward the unknown. What if you could see your struggles through this lens? Imagine the possibilities. This narrative is not just an ancient account, it's a timeless call to believe in the extraordinary. Join us on this epic exploration of faith and freedom and discover how to turn your own Red Seas into bridges to freedom. Curious to see how this story applies to your life? Let's find out together. After years of enduring slavery in Egypt, the Israelites, under the assertive leadership of Moses, reached a critical consensus. It was time to seek the promised freedom. The decision, though fraught with uncertainties, was a spark of hope on a gloomy horizon. Moses, along with Aaron, his brother and right-hand man, walked among the tents, sharing words that were like balm to wounded hearts. God has led us this far, and will not abandon us now, he asserted, instilling new vigor in the crowd. Each man, woman and child, buoyed by renewed faith, hurried to gather their meager possessions. The news of the escape would soon reach the palace, triggering Pharaoh's wrath. They knew the journey would not be easy, but the weight of freedom, even uncertain, was preferable to the certain yoke of oppression. As the community mobilized under the dark cloak of night, Moses observed the starry sky, searching for divine signs. He was a leader not out of ambition, but by calling, and he deeply felt the weight of every life now dependent on his next choices. At the first sign of light on the horizon, the Israelite families, their eyes shining with hope yet also fear, began to move silently. Moses, at the forefront, held his staff firmly, a symbol of his spiritual authority and divine guidance. As they marched towards the unknown, behind them, the wheels of Egyptian chariots were already turning, anticipating the drama that would follow. As the Israelites advanced, the echo of Egyptian war chariots filled the air, a sinister sound that increased the tension among the people. Pharaoh, outraged by Moses' audacity and the Israelites' escape, had ordered his army, one of the most feared in the ancient world, to recapture the runaway slaves at any cost. The pursuit was relentless, with war chariots and well-equipped cavalry ready to quash the rebellion and drag the fugitives back into the chains of slavery. Moses, noting the growing fear among his people, reinforced the need to maintain faith. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." Exodus 14:13. In the meantime, Israelite families hastened their pace, carrying not just their belongings, but also the heavy burden of uncertainty. The sound of war chariots served as a constant reminder that freedom was not yet assured. Moses, ever vigilant, observed both the advance of the Egyptians and the response of his people. He knew that true leadership emerged in times of crisis, and his calm, decisive presence helped keep the group cohesive and moving towards the hope of a life free from oppression. As they neared the Red Sea, the situation appeared increasingly desperate. The sea in front, the Egyptians behind, a seemingly perfect trap that would test even the sturdiest of faiths. Yet Moses remained serene, bolstered by the divine promise of salvation. He encouraged each man, woman, and child not to look at the forces pursuing them, but at the freedom awaiting them. Remember the wonders God has already performed for us, and believe He will do so again, he said, as he prepared his heart and staff for what was to come. At the threshold between slavery and freedom, the Israelites, led by Moses, confronted the natural barrier of the Red Sea. With the Egyptian army rapidly approaching, desperation began to grip some, but Moses remained a pillar of faith. Raising his staff in the twilight, he called upon God, and the unthinkable happened. The waters began to part, revealing a dry path through the middle of the sea. The Israelites, though astonished, were encouraged by this divine sign and began to cross the seabed, surrounded by immense walls of water. As the Israelites moved forward on the open path, fear gave way to awe. Women and children touched the water walls, marveling at the unfolding miracle around them. Moses, leading from the front, kept his gaze fixed on the horizon, aware that each step was a testament to the trust placed in his leadership and God's protection. The sound of the people's footsteps mingled with the murmur of the suspended waters, creating a symphony of faith and renewal. Behind them, the Egyptian army, defying the nature of the miracle, boldly entered the same path. Pharaoh's arrogance led him to ignore the power now guiding the Israelites, a decision that would prove fatal. As Moses reached the other side, he looked back, watching the Egyptians in their reckless pursuit. He knew the greatest danger was yet to come, but his trust in the divine plan never wavered. As the last of the Israelites stepped onto dry land, a collective sense of relief spread. But tension still hung in the air. Moses then prepared for the final act of this divine spectacle. With a firm and decisive gesture, he extended his staff over the sea again. The families, now safe, turned to witness the conclusion of their dramatic escape. With Moses' faith as their compass, the Israelites saw the waters begin to stir. The miracle that had saved them was about to fulfill its purpose. As the waters closed, the fate of the Egyptian pursuers was sealed, marking not just an escape, but a spectacular deliverance under divine protection. When Moses stretched his staff over the Red Sea for the last time, the waters that had been miraculously suspended began to move with overwhelming force. The Egyptian army, now in the midst of the seabed, was caught off guard by the rapid change. As the Israelites watched from the safe shore, the chariots, horses, and soldiers were swallowed up by the returning waters. This moment marked the definitive victory of the Israelites, a complete liberation under the spiritual authority and divine guidance of Moses. The roar of the closing waters was like a cry of freedom for the Israelites. Moses, with his arms still raised, knew that each drop of water falling was a confirmation of God's promise. The people, watching their oppressors disappear, began to grasp the depth of what they had experienced. It was a palpable demonstration of God's power and a testament that no enemy is too great when faith and divine justice are on the side of a people. With the danger over, conversations began to fill with accounts of the miracle. Men and women shared their experiences, reinforcing each other's faith and weaving a tapestry of testimonies that would be passed on to future generations. The crossing of the Red Sea was not just a physical escape from slavery, but also a sign of spiritual renewal and purification for the Israelites, who now saw their identity as God's people reaffirmed. As the sun rose, bathing the new day in light, the sense of a renewed beginning permeated the air. Moses looked upon his people, his determination now mixed with the sweet realization of a mission accomplished. This was not just the end of a pursuit, but the start of a new chapter in the history of a chosen people, guided by divine promises and a leader who embodied the true essence of leadership and faith. After the miraculous crossing and the closing of the waters, The atmosphere among the Israelites was one of uncontained joy and deep gratitude. Miriam, Moses' sister, led the celebrations, playing her tambourine and dancing by the sea. The women joined her, their voices rising in songs of praise, a spontaneous and joyful response to the salvation received. The songs spoke of overcoming and faith, chanting verses about the freedom won and the power of God that had freed them from Pharaoh's grasp. In this scene of celebration, Moses watched his people, feeling a mix of relief and reverence for the divine. He knew that this moment of triumph would be a milestone in the history of the Israelites, a story of faith, renewal, and reaffirmed identity. Moses also took this time to reflect on the symbolism of that event. Each step taken on the dry seabed represented a passage from a life of restrictions to an existence of possibilities and hope. As the people celebrated, stories of the miracle began to weave into a cultural and spiritual legacy that would last for generations. These narratives not only reinforced Jewish identity, but also integrated into popular culture, influencing art, literature, and eventually cinema. Thus, the celebration became an act of transmitting a heritage infused with faith and miracles, teaching about divine protection and the value of perseverance. As the hours passed, the celebration gave way to a feeling of communion and solidarity among the people. Moses and the leaders began to plan the next steps, aware that physical freedom was just the beginning of a long journey to build a society based on justice, law, and mutual respect. The Red Sea had been both a physical obstacle and a psychological barrier that, once overcome, opened a new chapter in the lives of the Israelites. This new chapter, though uncertain, was seen as a blank canvas ready to be filled with the ideals and dreams of a people who had learned the true meaning of freedom and faith. The hope and commitment to move forward, guided by the divine promise and Moses' spiritual leadership, were now the pillars on which they would build their future. In the Sinai desert, with the memory of the Red Sea still fresh in their minds, the Israelites began to see Moses not just as a liberator, but as a true leader shaped by faith and divine commitment. Under his leadership, the community faced the challenges of the desert, learning to trust in the providence and guidance that came through him. Moses, in turn, relied on his intimate relationship with God, seeking guidelines that would sustain his people both physically and spiritually. This man, who had once hesitated when called to the mission, now displayed an authority that inspired respect and trust. He taught his followers not just to obey divine laws, but to understand their greater purpose, to live in a just and equitable society. Through his speeches and actions, Moses reinforced the idea of a community united by faith and mutual respect, a lesson that resonated deeply in hearts once marked by oppression. However, leading was not an easy task. Moses faced frequent challenges to his authority, both from within and outside his community. Each test, however, served to strengthen his leadership, proving that his ability to remain calm and faithful in critical moments was a true manifestation of his strength. He was seen as a divine guide, an intermediary between the people and God, whose decisions were grounded in visions and revelations that sought the common good. Moreover, Moses' ability to communicate the people's needs and hopes to God and vice versa was a crucial aspect of his leadership. He not only conveyed divine commandments, but also interpreted their practical implications for the daily lives of the Israelites. This created a sense of belonging and purpose among the people, who saw in Moses not just a religious leader, but a mentor and protector. Reflecting on the journey up to that point, Moses understood that true leadership involved sacrifice, patience, and an unwavering dedication to the mission entrusted by God. This awareness transformed every decision, every step taken in the desert, into parts of a greater trajectory designed to lead his people not just to a promised land, but to a new way of existence based on freedom, justice, and faith. We've come to the end of this epic journey, but the real challenge begins now. Like Moses and the Israelites at the Red Sea, you too face your own seas of challenges. Perhaps it's time to take up your staff, raise your faith, and part the waters of the difficulties that surround you. What sea do you need to part today to achieve the freedom you so desire? I ask you, what chains still bind you? The chains of fear, doubt, or perhaps complacency? And how can you use your faith, your determination, to break these chains? It's not just about believing in the miracle, but also about acting towards the impossible, trusting that the path to your liberation will be revealed with every courageous step you take. I encourage you not just to hear this story, but to live its lessons. Be brave, be bold, turn your faith into action. And if you find the journey too difficult, remember that sometimes it takes a completely desperate situation to discover how powerful your faith really can be. What will be your first step towards your own crossing? If you found value in this narrative and want to continue exploring how ancient stories can inspire modern changes, subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications. There's much more we can learn together. And now I ask you, are you ready to cross your own seas and claim the freedom that awaits you?